Okay, to get started with this lesson, we are going to start with a 5" by 5" canvas that is 72 pixels per inch. Go to File, New, make sure you have 5" by 5", 72 ppi. I want you to click on Create, and the first thing you need to make sure that you have your timeline panel open. If you do not see the timeline panel open at the bottom of your screen, you're going to want to go to Window and choose Timeline. The next panel that you need to make sure you have open is your layers panel. And I'm going to pull my layers panel out here to the side just so that it's easier for everybody to view the panel. Okay, so we are going to work with what we call timeline animation. And we are going to make sure that when we drop down here from our menu option in the middle of the timeline, that we have Create Video Timeline selected instead of Create Frame Animation. Frame animation is what you did previously, where it had the little boxes, and timeline animation is what we're going to work with today. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw all of our static objects, meaning all of the things that aren't going to move. If you have multiple things, you're going to draw them on separate layers, but for what we're going to do right now, I'm just going to make one layer, and I'm going to call it ground. Okay. We're going to get a black paintbrush that is 3 pixels in diameter, and it's going to be 100% hardness, so we choose that. And we're going to just draw a straight line going across the screen. It's okay if it's not perfectly even with the edges of the screen. Let's do Control 0 so that we have a big view of what we're working with. The next thing that we're going to do is we want to create a layer of something that is going to be actually animated. So we're going to go to Layer, and we're going to come down about halfway down, choose New Video Layers and New Blank Video Layer. So we click on that, and when we click on the New Blank Video Layer, you're going to see that down here at the bottom of your screen in your timeline panel, you now have 2 layers. One is called Layer 1 because we haven't renamed our video layer, and then you have a layer called ground. So let's rename layer 1, and we're going to call it ball. And you'll see that when you updated the ball name down here, it also updated it on the timeline. Okay, and when you're looking at the timeline, by default, Photoshop creates 5 seconds worth of animation, which is much longer than what we are actually going to use. So when you're looking at the time increments on the timeline, you'll see it looks like 3 o'clock and it has an F behind it. Those are 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds. Now the breakdown in between like 0 and 1 seconds, it should say 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 10F, 20F, and then this would be 30F. That means that there are 30 frames per 1 second, which means that in order to get 1 second of animation, you would have to draw 30 different pictures, which would be very, very complicated for what we want to do. So before we begin, we're going to change our frame rate. I'm going to click over here on my timeline menu, and I'm going to set the timeline frame rate, and we're going to change it to 10 frames per second. So now I still have 5 seconds, but if I were to zoom it out by grabbing this little handle right here and zoom out, I see that I have basically 10 frames that make up between 0 and 1 second of animation. Okay, so we're going to start on the blue little slider up here is called your playhead. I'm going to make sure our playhead is at the very beginning of the animation, and I am just going to draw a circle at the top of my screen. Now, if you want to make sure that your circle is really smooth and not jagged, you can change the smoothing. The higher the smoothing number, the more work that your computer is going to do to make it look better, but it also delays and lags your computer. So I usually try to keep mine somewhere between 30 and 40% when I'm doing this type of animation. Now, if I move my cursor, if I click down here on my playhead and I move it over one spot, my ball disappears. So what I would need to do is I want to draw the next step, but I need to kind of see where the ball started out with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to my timeline panel again, and this time I'm going to choose Enable Onion Skins. And what I want to do, when I enabled onion skins, you'll see the previous ball, but it is semi-transparent. That way it shows that that's really not drawn on that specific frame. I can come down here and choose onion skin settings, and I can choose to show one frame before the action, and I can choose one frame after. Okay, so right now I can see where the ball came from. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw another ball that's roughly the same size, but this time it's going to be moving downward slightly. Okay, I moved my slider, my timeline playhead over one, and I'm going to move the ball again. As the ball is going down, you're going to continue to try to make it pretty much the same shape. It is okay if that ball is not exactly perfect in diameter. As we start to go further down, if you want the ball to speed up, you move the ball farther from the original one. Oops, I went too far, so now there we go. So I'm barely overlapping each time. As it gets close to touching the ground, the ball is going to get slightly flatter because it's going to be almost like a splat. So here I'm going to draw it more horizontal, and maybe I'll draw these lines to indicate motion. Make it a little bit flatter than the one before. And now I'm going to start to work the way back up. Now you'll see that in that particular ball, it overlaps and it's really sloppy. That's okay, because we want this to be just a very rough animation. Now, it's a good idea after you draw a second or two of animation to go back and play your animation to see how it looks. You can either hit the play button on the bottom of your timeline, or what we can do is take this playhead and pull it backwards, and as you drag the playhead, this method is called scrubbing. And so what you'll see is the animation starts to play. Because we had on our onion skin settings, click on that real quick so you can see, because we have one frame before and one frame after, that's why you see three different states of the ball whenever you see onion skins. Now, if we're going to continue to draw, the ball gets flatter, splat, now it's going to start to bounce away. And so what you're going to do is you're going to continue through this lesson to draw the ball going upward, and then you want it to come back down and bounce off the screen the other direction. Once you get the ball drawn, we want something to occur right here so it's a splat sound. So we'll get to the next step of inserting a sound clip in there later where your sound effect can actually make it appear as if it's truly splatting. To finish this out, if you don't animate all 5 seconds, which you probably will not take 5 seconds to animate all of this, we can click on the end of our timeline right here, and I can choose to shorten it down to 4 seconds. And then the other thing that you want to do is we want our animation to loop just like it did when you did frame by frame animation. So to do that, we click on the settings, and we're going to choose loop playback. And so that way it will continuously play back and forth. To check your animation one last time to make sure you like how it looks, before you actually render it, I usually tell you to enable or disable your onion skins. That way, when you're scrubbing it and playing it, you can see what it'll truly look like once it gets through with the animation process. Now, you can also still save this as an animated GIF. If you save it as an export, say for web, and do animated GIF, any audio that you add in here will not play because a GIF cannot support audio. So if you insert a audio clip into your animation, you want to render the video. And when we render the video, it's going to save it as an MP4. You're going to want to make sure that you choose your destination for where you're going to save it. The encoder will be H264 high quality, leave the document size as whatever you set it up as. The frame rate is 10 frames per second because that's what we changed it to. Everything else should stay as your default settings, and you should hit render. And that's the end of the bouncing ball lesson.